Tony, I was wrong.
I'm sorry, I couldn't. Could you say that again?
It's possible that I said some things that weren't completely accurate because a year ago we made a video and I said that Canon would always be #1, but recently some things have happened. Canon made some choices, Sony made some innovations, and I'd like to reconsider my position respectfully.
Okay, so we're going to recap everything that's happened between Canon and Sony in the last year because it's been big. The entire industry has changed. But first I want to thank our sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is your home on the web. That should not be social media because you don't own that. Somebody else is making money on that. You need a website where you can book appointments, sell your products, and do just about anything else. You need your own custom domain so your emails aren't gmail.com. Get started at squarespace.com/Chelsea completely free. Set it up, try it out. When you love it, the coupon code Chelsea get you 10% off. What if people don't know how to spell Chelsea?
It's CHELSEA.
Thank you, Squarespace. First, can we just rewind a year?
We don't have to.
I want to go back to this video. You dragged me down here into the studio and made me record a video called Why Canon Will Always Be #1. Now, at the time, you were a Canon R5 shooter. And in fact, I was using Canon for video.
It's a great camera.
I'm still kind of using Canon for video. It's a great camera. What do you shoot now? Still the R5?
No, the Sony Alpha 1. But I have to switch cameras all the time, and it's my job and it's my responsibility as a tech reviewer. So at the time, all things were pointing to Canon coming out on top. Okay, so I do defend that. They had great lenses, they were making great innovations, their animal eye autofocus was better. They had a lot going for them.
Yeah, we kind of didn't expect all the advancements that we've seen from Sony in the past year. Now, in that past video, you looked at a chart that showed how many people were searching for Canon camera versus Sony camera. And if you look at that chart as it's been updated in the past year, Canon's still ahead. But Sony is really catching up. You can see the lines are getting closer and closer. Sony is taking market share, mostly away from Nikon, but some of it seems to be from Canon too. Can I share a slide from your previous presentation? You said, how can we predict what Sony is going to do next? Canon's doing it today. Well, that was really true. Yeah. Canon really was innovating. Like the R5 was kind of mind-blowing, and Sony didn't have anything like that at the time. And like, for example, the animal IAF, the 8K. Canon blew us away with the R5. Sony kind of caught up and outdid them quickly.
Yeah, that's true.
Like in the course of a year. You had a slide that had all the reasons you loved Canon. The dual pixel autofocus for video worked better.
It did.
But we both now record our videos on Sony, at least outside of the studio, because I've had several scenarios where the Canon lost autofocus and now the Sony actually seems more reliable. Sony's been relentless with their firmware updates. They listen to our complaints and they seem to be addressing it rapidly. When we made that video, Canon had a couple of fast f1.2 primes that we loved, the 50 and the 85. Sony now has a 50 f1.2, and I think the 85 is coming soon. Canon's 70-200 f2.8 was like better than Sony's. It was smaller, lighter, better quality.
It was new, and it was smaller and lighter, and that was really nice.
Yeah, but since then, Sony released a new 70-200 f2.8, their second generation, and when I did a test, the image quality completely blew away to the Canons to the point where I would feel guilty using the Canons for things like contrast and sharpness, like important stuff. You were shooting wildlife so much with the 800mm f11. We'd go out on our kayak where you weren't going to bring a 600 f4, and you were using that. And the last time you tried that, you just got frustrated with it.
I still stand by that lens. I still think it's a great lens because it's 800mm. It's, it works well. But my problem is that I go out during the golden hour frequently, and when the light was low, there'd be a lot of noise because it's an f11 lens, so you're not letting in a lot of light. Now I use the Sony 200-600, f6-6.3, and I have like 4 times the amount of light, so if I'm shooting a little later in the day, it's not problematic.
Yeah, and that's not really apples to apples.
No, it's
because
not.
the 800 millimeter f11 is $900 and the 200 to 600 is like $2,000.
Yeah.
So that is still a niche that Canon really owns. And I don't feel bad at all telling people to get a Canon R10 or
No.
Canon R7 with those f11 lenses. That's still like a great, Sony doesn't have that matched.
No, so I
At
want
that
to
price point.
interject now for practical purposes, because in our last video we had comments where people were like, we can't afford to update or we can't afford to flip-flop. We do not expect you to do that. When we make these videos, we're not saying go sell all of your Canon gear or go sell all of your Nikon gear. We're not saying that. What we're saying is that we find it's interesting how these camera companies play catch up and who's innovating first. It's fun. It's like we're the sportscasters of a game. And so this isn't about your buying decisions. It's just about the fun of business, I think.
This is a halftime show. And we're breaking down what happened in the first half, and
Yeah.
we're talking about what's going to happen in the second half.
Yeah.
The last point you made was that Canon at that time had much better animal IAF. Even comparing the R5 to the more expensive Sony Alpha 1, the R5 was better at the time.
That's also changed. The Alpha 1 has better animal IAF and tracking in general.
Yeah, because of firmware updates.
But those aren't even the reasons why I started to reconsider.
Okay.
The bigger reasons, one of them is that Canon blocked third-party lenses. And when I heard that, I thought that that's really limiting people from buying more affordable lenses in the system. And I think it's going to be a good short-term plan for them, but long-term, I don't think it's a good business decision.
We've covered the camera history of all the major camera manufacturers, and we've kind of seen the same mistakes happen over and over again when manufacturers are in first place and they don't want to let go of that. Like this really happened to Kodak. They had a near monopoly, and they didn't want to cannibalize their existing market by shifting their resources into the new market, like shifting from film to digital. And Canon has been in the #1 spot for so long that I think they feel comfortable blocking all the third-party lenses because they want people to buy the Canon lenses, and they'll make more money from that. And maybe that could work, except that Canon is not giving us enough RF lenses. It's been 4 years since Canon released the RF mount, and the lens selection is still extremely limited, which is why we're using a macro lens on our Canon RP here instead of the 35 f1.4 that I assumed was coming right away when I switched the studio over to Canon. I went through and itemized all the wide-angle fast primes. These are the lenses that are most important to creators in general, the fastest growing market. And when I counted the Sony lenses, Sony has like 10 Sony branded lenses. You know, the Sony 14mm f1.8, 20mm f1.8, 20mm, 24mm f1.4. I counted with Tamron and Sigma like 20 lenses. And then I didn't even go and check out the Chinese manufacturers like Yongnuo. There's a bunch. Canon, in total, autofocus prime, wide angle lenses, three. In 4 years. And these are the most important lenses to us. And that is the driving factor between me switching from filming our out-of-studio stuff with the Canon R6 over to the Sony a7S III, because I was using an adapted Canon 24mm f1.4 DSLR lens, and it was big and clunky and kind of slow. Sony came out with the 24mm f1.4, and it was light and fast, and it works better on my gimbal. And that was kind of the tipping point for me.
I'm going off script a little bit here. Why do you think they would do that? Because they do have manufacturing capability. Do you think that they're limiting how much they're spending to bolster their bottom line so that their reports look better on their financial reports?
I don't know.
Because I don't know why they would do this, and it doesn't make sense to me, but there has to be a reason. Obviously, they're smart, they're a successful company. I just can't figure out what it is. I know that there's other things they've done within the company that are not related to photography. They did a huge stock buyback, and I looked at the Harvard Business Review to find out why companies do that, and they said that short term it can raise the stock prices to make the stock price higher. Short term it can be better for the company, but long term it can be bad for the company.
A lot of people are saying, okay, we don't need mirrorless lenses, we can use the DSLR lenses. That's Canon's strategy. Except the only benefit of moving to a whole new mount is that you can design fast wide-angle lenses more efficiently. They can be smaller. That is the only benefit. It's not IA autofocus. You could do that with the DSLR mount. They did it in live view.
Yeah.
It's just this one thing, and that's how Canon has addressed that massive part of it.
Also, because Sony's been around for so long, you can get a huge amount of used lenses. They've been using the same mount, and so
Since 2010.
Yeah, so for people on a lower budget that want to buy used, that's a better possibility with Sony.
I want to break down each of the company's strategies regarding content creators, and we'll contrast them to see how they're going to perform in the future. But first, we want to take another moment to thank our sponsor, Squarespace.
Whether you need your own website, portfolio, store, you can make it happen with Squarespace. And it's so easy. I've made about 3 of them so far, and it only takes like 10, 15 minutes, but you're gonna want to spend more time because it's really fun putting your best pictures in there, seeing what you've actually shot versus what you want to shoot, having client galleries and a store where people can buy your prints. If you can imagine it, you can make it happen with Squarespace. Try it out for free. For 14 days, you get it completely free. You don't even have to put in your credit card and worry about remembering to cancel. None of that. When you decide to buy it, because I know you will, you can get a discount with the coupon code Chelsea. So go to squarespace.com/Chelsea, use that coupon code Chelsea, that's CHELSEA. Thank you, Squarespace.
First, let's talk about the creator strategies. This bumps some of our audience who are like hardcore stills photographers, but it's very relevant to camera manufacturers because I've heard different numbers. It could be 85%, could be 95% of new camera buyers need video functionality. In fact, it seems like more people need video than they do stills. Stills is often a secondary trait that they need. Even Instagram now has announced that they are more for videos than stills.
I mean, it makes sense. The world of marketing, advertising, everything has changed from stills to video. People aren't looking at ads in the newspaper anymore. They're on social media, and social media is changing from stills to video. It's just more in demand at this point.
Yeah, and if you are a stills photographer, this is relevant because these companies need to make money. They need to make volume. They're going to do that by getting money from the literally millions of people creating video content for Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, etc. So let's talk about each of their strategies. Canon completely owned this market. We used and recommended Canon M mount lenses for a long time, like the M50. It was $500 and it got the job done.
Everyone loved those cameras.
Yep.
I always heard people say they love the M line, but then no more. It's not an option for people.
No, Canon doesn't seem to be supporting it, and they are not providing an upgrade path to RF. They made RF completely incompatible with M and then just walked away.
This is another argument for why I started to question Canon. Their cheapest cinema camera is $4,800.
R5C, which is basically just an R5. It's not even really shaped like a dedicated cinema camera. It's an R5 that doesn't overheat, so it's not even really a cinema camera.
Yeah, but then Sony just came out with their new cinema camera, and it's $1,800. And I understand why Canon doesn't want to go too inexpensive with their cinema line because they have a proper cinema line that's more expensive, and they don't want to cannibalize the sales in that. So Sony came along and just did it for them. And if Canon doesn't come up with a competitor for that, then Sony's just going to be eating up all those profits because who doesn't want an $1,800 cinema camera?
And Canon has just released 2 new APS-C cameras, smaller sensors. That's great for people with lower budget, which applies to most creators. But those are not attractive options for creators because all you have is a kit lens, and there are literally no wide-angle APS-C lenses for their mirrorless system. Not even zooms, nothing. If you want a wide-angle shot, which you need, you simply cannot do it with Canon's APS-C RF cameras. So we recommend them for wildlife, but we don't recommend them for creators. Now, Sony, on the other hand, they haven't always been good at this. They were behind for a long time, and that's why we were shooting Canon and regularly recommending it. Do you remember being at those early Sony events, and they would ask us what we want, and we would say, we need a touchscreen. My Canon, I touch it, and it focuses there. And they said, if we give you a touchscreen, your face will be pressed up against it. It's going to mess everything up. You don't want a touchscreen. And we're like, no, we do. And you know what? A couple of years later, they gave us a touchscreen. Like they resisted, but then they relented.
They also had the flip screens for vlogging that would flip up on the top of the camera, and then the mic would be blocking it, and they eventually changed it to side flip. One thing that I do value about Sony is that I can tell you from a reviewer's perspective, when we have criticism, they don't hold it against us personally. They don't put us in timeout. Like, they don't expect us to be giving them perfect reviews all the time. And when people have a criticism, they try to address it. And when we just went to the Sony Cando event, they do conferences with people where they're like, what do you want? What could we change? What could we do better? And you never feel uncomfortable. You never feel like, oh, they're going to avoid me or they're never going to talk to me again. They just changed the camera for the better.
Yeah, whereas Canon themselves sort of behaves like a Canon fanboy. Like if something in a Canon camera doesn't work, the Canon people blame the reviewer. Whereas at Sony, if something in the camera doesn't work, they're like, okay, we better fix the camera.
Yeah.
So Sony has been at E-mount for 12 years and there's no sign that they're going away. They have an $1,800 cinema camera with a built-in cage, which you have to spend like $6,000 to get something similar to that in the Canon world. They have a ton of fast mirrorless APS-C and full-frame wide-angle lenses, perfect for creators, and they're actively embracing TikTokers. Another thing I know is going to irritate our stills audience, but TikTok is this social media that is absolutely huge. Yeah. And if you want to make money off of people under 30, you need to be on TikTok. And there were millions of creators who could buy a camera. So I went and checked out Canon's page on TikTok. They have one video and they have 137 followers. Sony, not huge on TikTok, but they have 55,000 followers and like dozens of videos. Like they're giving a go at it. They're not turning their nose up at it. They're working. Not that it's all about TikTok, but I think that shows which of those two companies is better able to transition as trends transition and is going to be better able to capitalize on emerging markets going forward. And that's going to be key to everything, including their stills camera development.
So even before Sony was first to kind of like the influencer market, because the very first press event we went to was for Sony, and it took a while for the other camera companies to catch up. And I think that they're a little faster about adapting just socially too. Like they're looking out there for the trends, and they're willing to take some risks and try new things.
Makes sense since they're more of a consumer electronics company.
Yeah.
Sony actually makes smartphones, right? And smartphones happen to be by far the most popular camera, probably by a factor of 100. Canon has no smartphone strategy. Sony has an actual lineup of Xperia smartphones that have shutters. They're designed specifically for many different types of creators.
But I think the other cool thing is the integration between the cameras and the smartphones, because you can use the smartphone as a monitor. So they're thinking about how their customers are going to use these devices. So there's this vertical integration within the company where everything is becoming more compatible, especially now because they have a drone too. And I did not think the drone was going to be good. I'm going to be honest. I think that's a difficult market. DJI has been eating it up. But the Sony drone is a higher level drone. It's more expensive. How much was it?
With the gimbal, it's about $20,000.
Yeah, but it's high. But it's meant for like movies and real professionals. And the results, you put a full frame Sony camera on there, the results are way better than anything you get with a DJI.
Yeah, so, and for stills photographers too, I want one because I take a lot of aerial stills photos and I want to make huge prints, but the cameras on the DJI drones kind of suck. And I want to put my A7R4 in there and take it out to 400 feet and get the sunrise over the water. And I can't do that with DJI, but I could do that with Sony. And it integrates so nicely. Like the drone talks to the camera and I can touch the tablet on Earth and pick my focusing point on the camera.
I was getting really nervous when I saw you enjoying that $20,000 drone. I don't know about this one. I don't know how clear we need our aerial shots to be, but for the movie industry, with Sony Pictures also being a part of the Sony umbrella, again, the vertical integration, they're using all of the other facets of their business to support the imaging department. And, you know, they make the sensors and everything too, so it's looking good for them.
And it's not about whether you want the $20,000 S1. It's about the fact that Sony has a strategy.
Yeah.
They have been working on this product for years. It's currently out in the market. They are releasing new firmware updates like every couple of months, so we've seen them steadily improving it. And S1 isn't right for us, but I bet S2 just might be. Canon has no aerial strategy whatsoever.
That we know of. I mean, like last year, I changed my mind. Well, things have changed from year to year, so I've changed my mind. We don't know what's going to happen next year. It could be a shocker.
No, but if Canon announces a drone tomorrow, then they're still a full year behind Sony.
That's true. The other thing that concerns me is that I have the Alpha 1 that's been out for a few years. We shot with the R3 and it's not a direct competitor. It's like 24 megapixels, you know, it's got the built-in grip and everything. Where's the R1?
Where's the R1?
Where'd it go?
I
Because
feel like the Sony A1 Mark II is going to be out before Canon finally gets around to their first generation.
do you think they're going to announce it soon for the holiday season?
People are saying 2023.
So, I mean, that puts them behind by a few years. Maybe it's going to be amazing, though.
Maybe. The R5 blew us away. The R3 not so much.
I know everyone's like, Chelsea's going to switch. She switches cameras all the time. And like, absolutely, if it's better, I will switch. Duh.
Yeah, me
like,
too.
My
I
job.
have no loyalty.
Yeah, I have zero brand loyalty. You know what's really funny is that in the last video, people are like, oh, like they're so sponsored by Canon. Oh, back up the Canon money trucks. But then at the same time, they're like, why do you switch all the time? It's because we won't take sponsorships from these brands so that we can just say whatever we want. And actually, we don't completely get away with it because then we get put in timeout. And we
Yeah,
get,
it means we wait a couple of weeks until we can review a camera.
then we get uncomfortable emails, but it's worth it.
We don't work for Canon, we don't work for Sony, we work for you guys, the people watching. That's how we make our money, and that's why we pass on those sponsorships so we can be completely brutally honest about them. And sometimes people get their feelings hurt. If that's you, then write a comment down below. Tell us what we're wrong about.
Tell me about your feelings. Like, I'll be there for you. I'm going to support you, and I'm not going to be mean to you. You know who else we work for?
Who?
Squarespace. And they have nothing to do with cameras or lenses or any of this. So, you know, we don't have to worry about it influencing our reviews. But what we can tell you is that if you are putting out work like videos or pictures or whatever other business you have, Squarespace is going to work for you because it's so easy to use. It's fun. You drag and drop your pictures in. You build your site to make yourself look professional, and everything there is static. It's not ever changing like social media. You have control over it. And my clients love it. When I send them to their pictures, a lot of people aren't very tech savvy. You try to send them files or a Google Drive link and they can't figure it out. This, they go to a gallery and it looks nice and it makes their photos look great. So try it out for free. Go to squarespace.com/Chelsea, and when you decide to buy it, use the coupon code Chelsea to get 10% off. That's CHELSEA.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.
We're so bad at the ending.
I know, we're really bad at it. I would get better, but I've leaned into being bad at it.
We need like a catchphrase,
Do
like something we say.
that be like that.
Yeah.